Thank you, Professor Peterson, for this privilege to address this very important occasion when we celebrate the work that the graduates have put into their lives and now getting rewarded for it. To the graduates, congratulations. You've passed the test of self-leadership. You've had an epic leadership journey, mostly about leading yourself. You're graduating today because you've successfully influenced and inspired yourselves to think in a particular way and consequently to act in a particular way. You've had to stop yourself from doing certain things. You've had to lead yourself to do certain things. That's why we celebrate you today. I believe you've also had to lead other people in the way, to lead your friends to support you, lead your families to support you, and we thank everyone who has supported you to be at this place, at this moment. Now what? Well, some of you are already members of the noble and honorable profession of lawyers, and some of you will be joining that profession for the first time when you step out of these halls of Free State University. It is an old profession. It is a profession founded on honor, integrity, and trust. Do you agree with me, members of the public, that law is a profession founded on honor, integrity, and trust? Well, my pastor didn't think so. When I was a teenager, intending to apply to law school, my pastor came and spoke to my mother and said, good Christians should not be lawyers because lawyers are dishonorable. But imagine if lawyers were dishonorable. Among us, we have Judge Madlanga, one of the bright minds in our judiciary, with absolute integrity. But imagine if people like him had to be picked from the least honorable among us. What about lawyers who advise government? What if they were to be picked from the least honorable among us? Those who advise Professor Peterson and his colleagues to deal with you, what if they were dishonorable? Prosecutors, state law advisors, I mean, all of these are meant to be guardians of democracy. We all are supposed to be guardians of our democracy because the people are at the center of democracy, democracy being the government of the people, for the people, by the people. So people are mentioned 3 times. They are this anchor. But in the driver's seat, you find lawyers. Dear graduates, you'll agree with me, though, that there are lawyers who advise their clients, including the state, to act dishonorably, to get away with wrong or harmful conduct. I've met some of those. Some of them would discourage the state as their client from cooperating in investigations. Some of them would encourage the state to disrespect the provisions on ethics in the Constitution, Section 195, Section 96, and only honor the criminal law and say, as long as you've not committed a crime, you've not done anything wrong. They would even draft the press statements that are released to say, this person deserves to be in government because no court of law has found them guilty of crime. But it doesn't matter that an institution competent to make a judgment has said they've violated Section 195, Section 96, Section 237, and various provisions of the Constitution that require those who work for the public service to be fit and proper persons like lawyers. Because Section 195 requires those who work for us, those who work in government, to operate with the highest level of professional ethics. That is Section 195. So, but there are lawyers who tell them to ignore that. I had the misfortune of dealing with one such case involving the G's. They built RDP housing for a municipality, and when it came to pay, their lawyer advised them not to pay. Or they advised them not to pay, but the lawyer was one of those who we say they feed the crocodile. You know, the crocodile, you feed it, not knowing that it will eat you. It may be eating you as the last person, but it will eat you. Or those who give the scorpion a ride in terms of African proverbs. Like the frog that gave the scorpion a ride after the scorpion had stung people. And the frog was asked by the scorpion, may I have a ride on your back so that I can escape accountability, so that I can enjoy impunity? And the frog said, no, I'm not going to give you a ride because you're going to sting me. And the scorpion said, no, I'm not going to sting you. In fact, I'm going to pay you as well. And the frog allowed the scorpion to ride on its back, and halfway through the river, the scorpion stung. And the frog asked, why did you sting me? You promised not to sting me. Now we're both going to die. And the scorpion says, it is the nature of scorpions to sting. And it is the nature of scorpions. But there are some lawyers who encourage just that in government. And in the case of Mr. G built RDP houses as a subcontractor. And when it came to finalizing the project, he was told money had been charged, had been used for something else. There was no money to complete the project, but he was told, finish the project. And he did finish the project. When it came to pay time, well, he was told, okay, finish the project, we will pay you in the next financial year. And when the next financial year came, Mr. G was not paid. And government didn't say, we don't owe you. Government with legal advice said, we don't know you. Meaning, legally speaking, we don't know you. How many people have lost cases because a lawyer advised the people who owe them to say, I don't know you? Meaning there's a legal technicality that vitiates the link between me and you, and therefore, I don't know you. So in this case, Mr. G and Mrs. G, their company was a subcontractor. That's why government could say, I don't know you. But it wasn't, I don't owe you. Government also said, we didn't give you instructions to complete the project in writing. But whose job was it to give instructions in writing? So that's benefiting from your own misconduct. But to cut the long story short, this matter went to court and government won. Chief Justice or Judge President Ismail Mohammed and Dala Omar, who I worked for at the dawn of democracy, were very concerned about the gap between law and justice. And when we use technicalities to win cases, that gap between law and justice is widened. Similar lawyers advised people in government in Praza when we did the investigation, derailed, Nkandla, lawyers advised. State capture, lawyers advised. What they didn't know is that they were feeding a crocodile and giving a scorpion a ride. In Sepedi, Northern Sotho, they say, don't relieve yourself upstream, because you'll have to drink the water downstream. And as lawyers, we're part of society. When we advise, we're building the society we're going to live in. And we have to think about, is it the society of our dream? But I'm happy to say today, my pastor was wrong. If it was not for the selfless and gallant contribution of lawyers, many lawyers in this country, we wouldn't be celebrating 25 years of democracy today. So yes, we have a few bad apples, but the majority of lawyers keep societies going, and they've kept this one going. And I believe you will be those lawyers too, that are gonna lead and not mislead us, lead us to the place defined by the Constitution. Think about lawyers such as Pixley Kaseme, who at the age of 19, he already was dreaming of an Africa that was going to teach the world how to be human, despite he himself having experienced inhumanity. Think about the work that was done by lawyers such as Bram Fischer, whose name is now the name of our airport. They broke rank in pursuit of justice for all. But they lived in a society where justice was just us. As long as you look after number one, and those who look like number one, that's justice. But that was not justice, it was just us. And people like Bram Fischer fought for justice beyond just us. And that's why we ended up with the Constitution we have that is celebrated throughout the world. You know about Oliver Tambo, Mandela, Priscilla Jana, but there are people you don't know about, like Shulamith Muller, Priscilla Jana, and maybe a few know about Victoria Mxenge, who also made sure that we get the society of our dreams. Among us, we have Judge Madlanga, who wrote the Daniels case, vindicating the dignity of farm workers, the right to decent housing. It wasn't in the letter of the law, it was in the spirit of the law. It was about reading the Constitution in its entirety, infusing in the Constitution the vision of society we're trying to build, the values of human dignity, equality, freedom for all, and ultimately, the pursuit of peace. Because as long as there's injustice somewhere, there can't be sustainable peace anywhere. Peace and injustice cannot coexist. That's what the world has taught us. Justice Madlanga is not alone. The whole Constitutional Court has a history of reconciling the gap between law and justice. Justice Mlambo in the High Court of Pretoria is doing the same, and some of the cases he's dealt with are cases involving foreclosures, unfair foreclosures, where people's homes are sold for next to nothing. But what awaits you, dear colleagues, as you go out into the world? Sadly, you're still going to find a law where the gap between law and justice has not closed enough. You will find a struggle for social justice. You'll find situations such as Cheryl Zondo's case, who was asked how many centimeters was the penis of the person you're accusing of rape? And the lawyer said, legally, that's sound. But is it in line with the values underpinning the society envisaged in the Constitution? One based on Ubuntu, according to S. versus Makwanyane. One based on human dignity, according to many cases that the Constitutional Court has decided, but also according to Section 1. And a society where everyone's potential is freed and everyone's life is improved. So what will it take to bring us closer to the society of our dreams? And what will be your role as a lawyer? I would say for me, it's going to be important that in your role as a lawyer, you bring a social justice lens into everything that you do. Will this advance equality? Will this reduce poverty? Every decision. You advise companies to do the same. You advise government to do the same. That's the project, the M plan that we're hoping that we're going to have a partnership with the University of Free State, Wits, and other universities to run to help government to decide policies using data that predicts, will this size fit all? But one size fits all never fits everyone. So you will have to bring a social justice lens. You'll also have to bring an integrity lens to everything that is done. At a class with master students a few days ago, the young ones reminded me that we don't have to choose between ethical advice to government and legal advice. As lawyers, we have a duty to give government advice that includes both ethics and law. Have you thought about that? Well, it came from a young one when I was giving them a case study and said to them, okay, if your advice was based on ethics, what would it be? If your advice was based on law, what would it be? And one of the class members said, it shouldn't be. Every legal advice you give to government should include both ethics and law. Because Section 195 is not an optional section in the Constitution. Chapter 10 of the Constitution is not an optional chapter. It is part of the Constitution. Section 1 of the Constitution about values in society is not an optional section in the Constitution. Section 237 of the Constitution is not an optional section in the Constitution. And what we've found is that lawyers and courts are integrating these sections in their lawyering. What we need to do is to take the same insights into how we advise government. Do you agree with me? So you get into the world to apply your skills at a time of turmoil, at a time when there's hope that the future will be better. Here, 25 years into democracy, and as we look into another 25 years. In the rest of the world that is implementing sustainable development goals, there's hope that the next journey will be better than the previous one. But we are at a time when in the midst of that hope, there's also a lot of fear. Fear of poverty, fear of homelessness, fear of landlessness, fear of your business not being able to survive beyond the storms. Which brings me to our collective duty. Many of you have jobs now. Will you make sure that when you get into that job, the first thing you find out from your company is, what's your commitment to sustainable development goals? If not, how are we going to integrate sustainable development goals in our work? Because these UN Sustainable Development Goals are about creating the world we want to live in, a world that leaves no one behind, a world where the economy is sustainable, a world where the environment is sustainable. But it's not going to happen magically. So how do we bring that into our lawyering? But the last question you might say, what about those of us who haven't found jobs and who might not find jobs? My message to you is, you've come this far by leading yourself and leading others to support your journey. Yes, government should help provide jobs or create an environment for jobs. Yet, yes, companies should help, but why don't you be at the center of your own life? It would give me enormous joy if from this room I never see anybody standing on the road with a placard saying, I'm an unemployed graduate. I think as a lawyer, you should immediately declare yourself a legal consultant, immediately. Give yourself business cards, because you're qualified from now onwards. In fact, you're qualified before now. I mean, if I remember, at second year, I participated in a process that stopped people from being killed. They had been convicted under the common purpose principle through a shoddy lawyering process. When I heard the case, I approached Priscilla Jana and said, this can't be right. Priscilla Jana took the case and the matter was taken and she got an advocate for us. We saved these young people from death penalty. You now have your degrees and your diplomas. You can save a small business person from losing their business simply by failing to comply with the regulatory environment. You can provide secretarial services to companies. You can support the other graduates who are starting businesses by helping them to draft contracts. So what's going to help? One is being anchored on a path of epic leadership. Just do what you have to do, ethically, purpose-driven, impact-conscious, and committed to serve the nation. And if you're committed to serve the nation, it is going to be possible for you to find a path. It's not going to be easy. It may be tough. Don't take the low road, though. The low road is wanting to climb the ladder of success fast. Look at what has happened to some of our accounting companies in this country. And I suspect some lawyers still have to account for what happened at Trillion, Eskom, and other places. And I wouldn't like it to happen to any of you and to any of the students that are graduating during this season. We have to learn from the unethical conduct of those who have gone before us, but we can also learn from the resilience and leadership of the others who took the high road. And I've mentioned to you the Pixley Kasemes, Bram Fishers, Mandela, Priscilla Jana. They are innumerable. Dear colleagues, Pixley Kasemes said Africa would rise and it would teach the world how to be human. But how does Africa rise? Africa rises when you rise and lift others and the rest of the world with you. May you rise and pull the world with you. To do so, please lean on hope and work for justice. Justice may be tidy, but it always arrives to take its rightful place. God bless you.